and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Lauren, you got a story for the people. What is going on?
Honestly, just with the past 2 weeks, it's kind of hard to believe that people still are on the fence that climate change is real and that it is affecting everybody. Like Alaska was just slammed with an incredibly devastating storm. And, Biden has agreed to, fully fund the recovery efforts there, which awesome. But this is right on the heels of Hurricane Maria. And Fiona, Hurricane Ian is slamming on Florida right after the Hurricane Fiona. So it's we've had thing after thing hit after hit after hit on opposite sides of the country, over and over and over again. And it's truly devastating, the amount of destruction that these storms are causing to both America and American territories. So Puerto Rico was hit really, really hard by Fiona. And they're still recovering from Maria, which is wild that they're still recovering from Maria. So one of the things that kind of annoyed me a little bit was that, Biden did promise federal aid to Puerto Rico after Fiona. And then the storm hit Alaska, and you got the senators there being like, well, he promised full aid to Puerto Rico, which isn't even a state. So what about us? And then he was like, well, yeah, we're going to give you aid too. But it's they didn't give him any time to say that he was going to, help out, or, they didn't give that. There no time was given to actually determine how, if the full aid would be needed. And I'm glad he's going to help out. I'm absolutely yes, that's what the federal government should be doing in cases of natural disasters like this. They should absolutely be footing the bill to clean up. But this is what confused me too. So this is what Biden had to say about Ian and Florida the other day.
And before we do play, I just want to throw this out here too to all the senators in Washington, D.C. Puerto Rico, while it is not a state, the people of Puerto Rico are American citizens.
Yeah, it's still a U.S. territory.
They are not foreigners. They are not people to be dismissed. They are U.S. citizens. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. U.S. citizens that have been hit so many times by devastating hurricanes. And I remember in 2018 when we used to be on the radio, Daniel, Laney, and myself were saying that one day there's going to be this huge fatigue coming in to where people are just going to not want to live in these areas where these supposedly once in a century devastating storm keep on hitting their communities. I mean, can you imagine a day when they're just like, okay, Florida, Orlando, Miami, Tampa Bay, you've been hit so many times. What's the purpose of rebuilding? Because again, sooner or later, it's going to become pointless if we don't really do anything about climate change. So let's hear what Joe 30330 has to say. Is there anything else you want to add in before I hit the play button?
We can just hit it, and then we'll continue.
Florida's history. The numbers are still unclear, but we're hearing early reports of what may be substantial loss of life. My message to the people of Florida, the country, is at times like this, America comes together.
When
we're going to pull together as one team, as one America. Early this morning, I approved the governor's most recent request for the expedited major disaster declaration. That means the federal government will cover 100% of the cost to clear debris and for all the costs that the state has to engage in and expend to save lives. The federal government will also cover the majority of the cost of rebuilding public buildings like schools and state fire stations. And while we're seeing the devastating images in Florida, I want to be clear. To the people of Puerto Rico, we're not gone away. I am committed to you and the recovery of the island. We'll stand by you for however long it takes to get it done. I know the folks here at FEMA and across the federal government are working nonstop around the clock. Everyone hard at work in Florida right now deserves our thanks. And when the conditions allow it, I'm going to be going to Florida to thank them personally so we don't get in the way. I'll do our best. We're going to do our best to build Florida back as quickly as possible, but we're not going to be leaving. We're going to build it back with the state and local government. However long it takes, we're going to be there.
Okay. All right. All right.
The
All right.
Yeah.
refugee crisis is the worst.
All right. No. So one, his declaration that America comes together as one to solve disaster issues is kind of nonsense. The only times that I remember anything coming together to help disaster relief was when I was in middle school, and all the teachers would put out little buckets for us 8th graders to give them money, and whoever raised the most money for Katrina, that teacher would do something embarrassing, like shave their head or eat a live goldfish. It's and that's coming together for a for a nonsense, but there's a good altered ending there, but it's not necessarily for the right reasons. And his saying that Americans come together, if anything has been proven in the last 10 years is that no, they don't. Not at all, especially because then again, like I said, as there's a disaster in one place, aid is promised, awesome, and then there's a disaster in another place, and immediately everyone's like, well, hi, don't forget, hello, did we get it? It's yes, you will. Can you wait 2 minutes for the announcement to come out that you'll get some help? And Puerto Rico right now is really afraid that they will get completely forgotten because Florida is politically advantageous and Puerto Rico is not, and they're worried about that. 20% of Puerto Rico still doesn't have power. There's still a lot of water shortages, and there's a lot of hospitals are operating on backup generators, which is only sort of effective, and they're still really, really struggling there to get back on their feet from 5 years ago. And I really hope that, Florida gets help, sure, but I hope that they do not leave Puerto Rico in the slums either. We need to help them out.
Yeah. And when you look at stuff like this here, this is from the show notes here.
Mhm.
For those of you who don't know, Puerto Rico can only get resources shipped to it if it's done by American ships manned by American crew members.
Mhm. The Merchant Marine Act of 1920, also known as the Jones Act.
Yes. Thank you for that. Why don't you go ahead and share with our viewers what exactly the Jones Act is and what it does?
Okay, so it is a federal statute that it's supposed to just keep things safe for America, to make sure that things were not going to places they shouldn't go to. So among its purposes, the law regulates maritime commerce in U.S. waters and between U.S. ports. Puerto Rico counts. It deals with coastwise trade and requires that all the goods, like you said, transported by water are crewed by Americans with American ships built in America that they wave the U.S. flag, owned by U.S. citizens, and the citizens have to be U.S. permanent residents. So there's a lot of caveats there, and it also that's the Jones Act. Really, really shortly, just it. Make sure that everything to American ports are done with American crews. Puerto Rico is an island nation. Everything has to come to them from somewhere else. There's just very few things that they can necessarily get on their own because of, by nature of being an island, things have to come to them from other places, especially things like diesel, which is, important when it comes to using machinery to clean up after natural disasters. So the waiving of the Jones Act will allow things like diesel to come back into Puerto Rico from other places as well. But it's just people have been trying to get rid of this Jones Act for a long time because it's really dangerous and it really limits what can be done for the people who live there all the time, regardless of what's going on. And so the federal government's response to Fiona can be tied to the island status as a U.S. territory, and or colony. Some people are still calling it a colony, which it can't. Like, are we going to stateify it ever?
I mean, it is a territory. So call it what it is. It's
Yeah, advocates are calling it a colony. And its lack of political influence on Washington, say activists and academics studying the relationship between the federal government and Puerto Rico. So they also cite the ongoing impact of a 2016 law that was signed by President Obama, which restructured Puerto Rico's $72 billion debt and established a financial oversight board for the territory. So this board imposed austerity measures such as cuts in education funding, school closures, and reductions in public sector senior pensions. And advocates say that has all worsened the island's poverty, because, they're like, okay, when has like closing schools ever helped anybody?
Yeah.
Like, especially economically. It's just kind of horrific the way that we as a nation have been treating Puerto Rico and our the other territories too. Like, we have several of them, and the fact that we do not treat them with any kind of, like, as if the people who live there are citizens. We treat them as their second class, like they're pets. It's like come on, we have to actually do something about this, and we have to start changing our mentality in Washington about how we treat the people who live in our territories, because they still rely on our government, even though they don't get to decide who is in the government. Like,
it's again, these actions will come back. The actions of our politicians will come back to haunt the American people, because look at how we're treating our own citizens in Puerto Rico. And the thing is, eventually a fatigue will hit in. I don't know what will be the tipping point, but sooner or later, because the thing is, we don't have politicians that are willing to invest into our infrastructure, and all this pressure and power from these storms that are hitting a lot of the southern states, these massive hurricanes. There will be a breaking point to where people will probably say, or humor the idea, well, what's the point of rebuilding when we know next year it's going to get just as bad, and we may not have enough resources or material or financial support to even rebuild the cities and towns that have been severely impacted. I mean, will there one day be a day where all the cities and towns in Puerto Rico are systematically destroyed? What about Florida? How much of that area will still remain habitable? How many of these cities will still be viable?
like, Ian's starting to batter South Carolina now. Like, it's just,
yeah. Look, folks. Yeah, go ahead. I'll give you the final word.
I mean, you can talk, and then I was just going to say one last thing, but
yeah. So I guess my final word for this is, I wish we had better leaders, and maybe someday we'll have politicians that will treat climate change for the real threat that it truly is.
Well, yeah, you pretty much nailed it on the head. That's essentially what I was going to say. It's like, we need to actually be focused on the issues. Like, again, I've said this before. It's like, we need to focus on infrastructure here. Like, we have the money to help everywhere that is being affected by these storms within our borders. We just sent more money to Ukraine. So it's like, we can send more money to Alaska. We can send more money to Puerto Rico. We can send the money to Florida and the infrastructure. It's like, if we can keep sending billions of dollars across the sea, like, we can please focus a little bit more on our own people and helping the people who are dying in our own backyard a little bit. Like, please. I don't, and again, I don't want to ever act like, the people like in one nation are more relevant than people in another one, but the accent, like the idiom, like, you have to focus on the splinter in your own eye before the log in your neighbor's. Like, it applies sort of here too. Like, we have to focus on our own backyard before we start like poking around in our neighbors.
Agreed. And America's house is not in order at all.